Before we get started, a quick heads up. Presidents Unplugged now has merch. If you want to support the show and represent the podcast in your daily life, you can at presidentsunpluggedmerch.com. That is presidentsunpluggedmerch.com. Now, let's get into today's episode. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now imagine that countdown isn't for a rocket launch or a New Year's Eve party or a celebration of any kind. It's a countdown where nobody really knows what's on the other side. That's what made the year 2000, or Y2K, so scary. Because a countdown on the surface doesn't feel menacing. We see them all the time. What is menacing is when you have no idea what happens when it ends. No clear result, no guarantee that everything keeps working the way it did before. That's where the fear of Y2K lived. Not in explosions or chaos, but in uncertainty. The fear of something coming soon, something unavoidable, something global, and something that nobody could fully expect. Let's do this. What's interesting about Y2K is that for most people, it wasn't really even a thought until the late 1990s. It wasn't dominating conversation earlier in the decade. Y2K's in 7 years. No, nobody thought that. That changes during Bill Clinton's presidency. Clinton becomes the figure to represent the 90s in a lot of ways. And this is when the United States government begins to realize that something could really go wrong on January 1st, 2000. Not because of a war or sabotage, but because of a date change. That fear wasn't really abstract. Banks could crash, planes could fall out of the sky, government systems could shut down, corporations could lose massive amounts of data and money. All because computers understood time differently. But wait a second, why does the date being wrong on a computer mean anything at all? Well, here's why. In the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and even some of the early 90s, computers were extremely limited. You gotta remember, in the 60s and even some of the 70s, computers were the size of rooms. Computers were very limited, and they tried to save space anywhere they could in the hardware. One of the ways that companies often did that was, instead of saying 1999, they would say 99. Instead of 1987, they would just say 87. On the surface, that sounds super simple and like it wouldn't affect anything. I mean, it's just two numbers. But then we have the issue. On December 31st, 1999, on a computer that says December 31st, 99, when it flips, is it going to think that we're in the year 2000 or 1900? Whoa, that's a lot to take in at once. Computers were smarter than that, right? Come on now, it's not that dumb. Sure, some newer technology could figure that out because they used 4 digits, but older technology that was used in banks and government agencies that didn't update their systems, that was a real problem. I'm going to give you a little economics lesson real quick. Interest builds over time. What happens if a computer thinks it's 1900? It's going to take all the interest away. This is not good. People could lose money. And on a larger scale, computers that couldn't compute this new year could break entirely. This was an issue. So that's when the United States government stepped in their Y2K operations. The way that the government was planning to do it is to send a bunch of mechanics and engineers to go into all of these systems and change as many as they possibly could from the 2-digit system to the 4-digit system. And by the end of the 1990s, the United States spent tens of billions of dollars preparing for Y2K, with estimates often landing around $100 billion. And globally, that number reaches even higher. And that number matters because it raises that question: an investment for what? And that question really dives into why Y2K matters at all. To understand the fear, you have to understand the 90s. The 90s were when technology stopped just being for big corporations. In the 90s, most families had 1 or 2 computers of their own. Computers were no longer just something that would affect the 1%, the businesses, the government, the banks. This could affect everyone. And here's the thing. By the 90s, technology was becoming trusted. People did stuff on the internet. They made payments on the internet. They talked to people on the internet. We trusted this stuff. I mean, it's brand new. Why wouldn't we? But that's why Y2K was so questionable. Should we trust this technology? Or should we realize that it's more flawed than we think? Technology had never really been questioned before. And after these devices entered our homes, people were being told that they might not be trustworthy. Early cell phones, home computers, banking systems, airline software, it all relied on numbers. A 2-digit system versus a 4-digit system. That small shortcut that computers took created massive fear. If technology can't even tell the time correctly, can it really be trusted at all? And for the first time, Americans weren't just excited about technology, they were suspicious about it. While George Washington himself might not have had an Instagram page, Presidents Unplugged does. If you want to see some presidential content and overall updates on the show, come to the Instagram at presidents_unplugged. See you there. And when there's fear, guess who shows up? Tinfoil hats, conspiracy theorists. Y2K was a perfect breeding ground for conspiracy theories. Some were religious, believing that the year 2000 marked the end of the world. Others weren't religious at all. Aliens would arrive. They would come down to Earth and take us. The world would collapse. Planes would fall from the sky. Governments were hiding the truth. Hold on. What's ironic about this is that all those fears weren't completely false. If the government didn't take the leaps and bounds that they did, would these things have really happened? If that money hadn't been spent, some of those disasters actually could have happened. Banks could have failed. Data could have been wiped. What makes Y2K fascinating is that the conspiracy theorists were completely wrong about the outcomes, but they weren't always wrong about the risks. What stopped disaster wasn't luck, it was preparation. Engineers, programmers, and technicians, government agencies, and private companies worked together to make sure the worst didn't happen. And that says something important. Even in a moment filled with fear, Americans showed they could unite around a common cause. So many people worked tirelessly for months and even years to prevent the worst. They continued to work, they continued to fight, they continued to look at every single possible caveat that Y2K could seep into. And then it happened. 3, 2, 1. January 1st, 2000. The countdown ended, and almost nothing happened. No planes fell from the sky, no banks collapsed, no global blackout of electricity. There were some issues, but they were specific and they were limited. Fewer than 1,000 documented cases in the United States involved financial miscalculations or system errors, things that were expected to happen to the entire world only happened to about 1,000 people. And all of those cases were handled individually and were dealt with through the government. Which leads to the most important point of the entire episode. The true impact of Y2K wasn't what happened. It was what didn't happen. Because of preparation, because of investment, because people took a problem seriously before it became a disaster, the world was saved. That preparation didn't come with a cost, though. Fear. The government had so much emphasis on Y2K. They made it a huge deal. While it was necessary, it amplified the anxiety that the Americans already had of their clocks striking midnight. Americans were wondering if technology could even survive, if technology would last. Because, really, still at this time, technology could have still been a fad that people got over. But it wasn't. Technology stood the test of time through one of the most chaotic scrambles in United States history. And the new digital world was not just a passing phase, it was permanent. And back then, you got to think, people really had time to think about this. They didn't have a screen in their pockets to cure all boredom. No constant distractions. People sat down with the thoughts of what would really happen. Today, we look back at Y2K as a simple transition, a turn of a calendar. And very few people truly know what could have happened if the government didn't step in. But at the time of Y2K, the information was heavier. It was a test for America, and we passed it. Y2K might not have ended the world, but it did change how we understood it. It showed that fear doesn't always mean failure. Sometimes fear leads to preparation, necessary preparation, and preparation leads to progress. That progress was stated perfectly at Bill Clinton's 2000 State of the Union address, where he said this: "We are fortunate to be alive at this moment in history. Never before has our nation enjoyed, at once, so much prosperity and social progress with so little internal crisis or so few external threats. Never before have we had such a blessed opportunity and, therefore, such a profound obligation to build the more perfect union of our founders' dreams. We begin the new century with over 20 million new jobs, the fastest economic growth in more than 30 years, the lowest unemployment rates in 30 years, the lowest poverty rates in 20 years, the lowest African American and Hispanic unemployment rates on record, the first back-to-back budget surplus in 42 years. And next month, America will achieve the longest period of economic growth in our entire history." Oh my goodness. Talk about hope. Talk about excitement. In the late 90s, we as a nation realized the scale of this task that was ahead of us. How Y2K could destroy us. But instead of taking it as a fearful idea, we took it as a chance for success and opportunity. After this event passed, on December 31st, 1999, that countdown was not a countdown of fear, but a countdown that a brighter tomorrow is ahead. And that if we as a nation can conquer one of the largest fears in recent human history, what can't America achieve? And that is why Y2K is so important. Tune in next Friday as we talk about James Madison, the father of the Constitution, the man that shaped the Bill of Rights, and the man who watched the White House burn in the process. I'm so excited to kick off Season 3, and I can't wait to see what the season can offer. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week on Presidents Unplugged. I'm Ty Svensson, and I'll see you soon. God bless. We need to make an executive decision now. The executive decision to follow Presidents Unplugged on Apple Podcasts or Spotify today to be notified weekly that your favorite presidential podcast has released new content. Now, let's get back to the show.